Welcome to Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom. I'm Peter Gross, co-host of the original Wild Kingdom with Marlin Perkins and Jim Fowler. In the early days of filming wildlife, as you'll see tonight, researchers had to capture animals in order to observe and learn from them. But that's no longer the case today. Modern technologies such as drones and satellite tracking offer new ways to study animals in their natural habitat with less intrusion, free from human touch. Wild Kingdom set the gold standard for nature programming and introduced generations of young people to the wonders of the natural world. Fortunately, the successful research that began with our original series helped many animals make a comeback from the threat of extinction. And that's good news for the Wild Kingdom. So sit back, relax, and enjoy Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom.
Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom.
Hello. Welcome to Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom. These cattails are familiar to most of us as something interesting and decorative, but to me, they're a symbol of the marshes, the cattail country of the Wild Kingdom. Of all the places in the world where an abundance of plant and animal life is to be found, none is more fascinating than the wetland areas. Here the drama of animal life is played in full. Life begins, the struggle for survival goes on, and for some, life ends abruptly. It's an area not quite water and not quite land, but something in between. Jim Fowler and I have recently explored two famous marshland areas. Jim's trip took him to the majestic Tetons, while I went exploring the northern marshland of Alberta, Canada. These vast areas not only contain a year-round animal population, but are the summer nesting grounds for millions of waterfowl, particularly ducks and geese, which migrate to them each year. If you tried to pack into these areas, it would be several days of hard travel. By plane, it's a comfortable few hours, and when you use a float plane, every lake is a potential landing field. This is especially comforting to know when you have only one engine. Of course, it's the remoteness itself which has made the swamp and marsh areas of Canada such a haven for the vast numbers of animals you'll find there. The air trip gives you a good chance to see the vastness of this water wilderness of streams, marshes, and beautiful lakes. This has been a wet year, and we can expect to see great numbers of animals. The Canadian Wildlife Service keeps men and equipment in this area, and they'd been notified I was coming, so there was a canoe waiting for me. A canoe is so light, it's easy to bring in by plane. This is really the very best method of travel for someone like myself, who's here to observe the animal life. It looks like I'm in luck already. A moose, and it's a big one. Moose are really browsing animals, but they do much of their feeding on the bottom of a pond. This is a male. You can tell by the antlers just starting to sprout. Quietly I moved on as a flock of Canada geese passed overhead. These areas are their nesting grounds. The geese are prolific and raise a family each year. You don't often see the very young because the adults keep them hidden. Many of these water birds have interesting courtship habits. The ruddy duck bobs up and down and calls with such force, the water vibrates around him. Not all the activity can best be seen from a canoe. These marshes are full of mud holes, and you have to be careful where you walk. A yellow-headed blackbird is very much at home in cattail country. Here's some excitement developing. The mating season usually causes fights among males. These are coots, and it looks like it's going to be a good fight, referee and all. And the referee joins the fight. You're always likely to come across a deer in these marshes. They're not especially afraid of man because they haven't been hunted much. The mud along the water's edge is quite treacherous, and the older animals learn to stay out of it. The younger ones must sometimes learn the hard way, and this young moose is in serious trouble. And before long, we're both in trouble. Well, I hope this young fellow has learned his lesson. These spectators are Franklin gulls. Like all gulls, they're great fish eaters. A western grebe swims by, carrying its baby on its back. Even after the young is full grown, he's still fed by his parents. Fish is the main food. You're also likely to find otters in these marshes where crayfish, their favorite food, is plentiful. These playful, fun-loving fellows are great swimmers, completely at home in this water environment. Now it's time for me to be heading back to camp. The baby sandhill cranes in remote areas are unafraid of man. Since I couldn't see their parents, I thought they might be orphans. So to find out, I picked one up. Sure enough, the parents were nearby, attempting to draw my attention away from their young by drooping their wings and pretending they're injured. This is the old broken wing act. Well, we both had enough for one day, so off you go, young fellow.
You don't usually think of this magnificent country, the mountain area of the Tetons in Wyoming, as the sort of place you would find marshes. But right here, surrounded by these beautiful snowy peaks, you'll find some of the finest wetlands in North America, relatively undisturbed for centuries and teeming with life. One of the animals usually found in any cattail country is the beaver. This unique animal, perhaps more than any other, has learned to change his environment to suit his own needs. This particular beaver seems to have a problem. The dam, which he has so carefully built to back up the waters and form a lake, has been badly damaged by a flood. Repairs must be made to preserve the environment which he's created for himself. Although he's not aware of it, the other animals of the area are all affected by his work. A pair of trumpeter swans has found the lake a perfect place to raise a family. These swans mate for life, and under the right conditions will raise a family of 3 or 4 cygnets each year. Any construction engineer will tell you that repairs first must be made by adding materials to the upstream or water side of the dam. As on all construction jobs, they're spectators. It's going to be difficult to repair this damage with the water pouring over the dam, but it must be done quickly before too much water runs out. In the dry weather, this water is precious and none appreciates that more than the beaver himself. The great blue heron also depends on this permanent water supply. These herons are great fishermen. They're also strong flyers and seem to be able to hold their own in a world full of predators. Baby herons aren't what you might call beautiful. The parents are never far away and take turns feeding in the prescribed way. Regurgitation of food is the common method of feeding young herons. Sometimes the babies get confused as to where the food comes from and will grab at the nearest beak. They soon learn that it's only the big beak that supplies the food. It's spring and these mallards have started their courtship. Sometimes another mallard has his eye on the same female and a fight will often result. The winner and new champion. Our friend the beaver isn't concerned with the others that share his territory. He still has work to do before this dam will hold water, although the heavy flow seems to have been stopped. But now another complication is about to enter the beaver's life. The mother bobcat is hunting near the dam, and her kitten is exploring nearby on his own. Our friend the beaver has decided it's time for lunch, and using his big tail as a paddle, he's off to find a juicy young sapling. A baby bobcat, like any young cat, is curious about his world, and a beaver is something to investigate. I don't know if he ever heard that curiosity killed the cat. Nevertheless, he's decided to go back to his mother. Now the work on the dam must be finished, for soon the predators of the nighttime world will be stirring. Another animal that benefits from the beaver's handiwork is the muskrat. His home, like the beaver's, is built far out in the water, protected from all but the most determined predator. None fits that description better than his enemy, the mink. Now the stage is set for the life and death struggle that is repeated so frequently in the wild kingdom. The muskrat swims for the protection of the reeds, and the mink finds no one at home. He's determined, though, and carefully tracks down his prey. The hunt is over, and the chase begins. The muskrat is larger, the mink is cunning, alert, and attacks with lightning speed. When he locks onto the neck of his victim with powerful jaws, the fight is over. The beaver's work is done, at least for the moment. You might say he really provides his own cattail country, a wonderful water environment for all the animals to use.
Late in the summer, I returned to the cattail country of Canada to participate with the Canadian Ministry of Conservation and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service in one of the greatest catching programs I've ever seen. It was a mass duck banding operation which took place in Watts Lake in northern Alberta. First, some special trapping equipment was set up. Jim has a model to show us right here.
Well, this is the usual type of duck trap. The pen is the center of the operation and is placed along the shore. There's a fence leading from the pen along the shoreline, and also one leading well out into the water. The ducks are all chased from various parts of the lake over to this area, where they're run along the fence into the trap and caught and banded.
That's exactly how it happened, and it was successful because it was operated during that short period in the summer when the birds were molting and couldn't fly. I arrived just when the fun was about to begin. My companion was Gordon Lee of the Alberta Fish and Game Department, and when we arrived, we discovered we weren't going to be just spectators. We were going to be part of the drive, and our first job was to understand the plan of action. It wasn't a large lake, but this drive was going to require coordinated effort. Bill Fuchs of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service was in charge. This was the main lead extending out into the lake, against which the ducks would be driven. Wildlife photographer Ed Jones was stationed on shore to catch the action from a hidden position. My job was going to be the most fun of all. I got to ride in an airboat, along with our cameraman, Jack Richards. If you've never ridden in an airboat, you have a real thrill in store. It's a fast, windy way to travel, but it'll take you places you can't reach in any other kind of boat. Since the boat is pushed by an airplane propeller, it can travel through very shallow water at speeds up to about 50 miles an hour without fear of grounding. The other boats that the men were using were conventional outboards. Our airboat was the key boat in the plan because it could go anywhere on the lake and could go there in a hurry. The ducks were in the Tule reeds, and our job was to chase them out into the open. The job of the other boats was to drive the birds toward the leads and the pen on the shore. We knew the birds must be hiding in the reeds because the ones we were after were still in molt and didn't have their new flight feathers, so they were not yet ready to fly. There go our first customers. Communication was by two-way radio, and from their position, the men could relay information to us in the airboat and coordinate the drive. Of course, some of the waterfowl on the lake could fly. The birds rising in flight ahead of us here are coots. By continuously moving through the sheltered area of the lake, most of the flightless ducks were finally chased out of the Tule reeds to the open water. And from here, the other boats herded the birds toward the funnel made by the two wire fences or leads. Slowly, the team of wildlife officers forced the birds to follow the wire lead to the entrance of the trap on the shore. The purpose of a roundup like this is to band the bird so that future hunters or others who find a banded bird can report where it was taken and when. This data is sent to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and provides valuable information on the habits and range of the birds. This information is vital to future conservation efforts to protect these waterfowl. One by one, the birds follow the fence lead and enter the trap. This was a good drive, and without taking a head count, we knew we had a full pen and that this was going to go down as a successful day. Phase 2 of the operation was to separate the different types of ducks, and this required experience because these birds were young and hadn't yet developed their full plumage. The ducks were transferred to smaller pens in these dip nets, but first they had to be identified. The general plumage is similar. The wing markings show that this one is a young mallard. This one has the distinctive wing markings of a blue-winged teal. After the birds have been identified and separated, the banding gets underway. This is a very simple process and does no harm to the bird. There's a difference in the rate of development of these birds. This one has new flight feathers fully developed, but for some unknown reason didn't fly. As a contrast, the new flight feathers on this bird are just starting to grow. These shafts encase the new growing feathers, which will continue to develop, and in about 2 weeks will look like the wing of the other bird. At this stage, he is unable to fly. Of course, records must be kept of the birds banded and of the identifying number on the band. The band has on it a number and a request to send it to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service with information as to where and when the bird was taken. This fellow is on his way and soon will be joining the other birds that are already collecting in preparation for the great yearly migration. His plumage will soon fill out, and with the first touch of cold weather, the instinct to leave this region will be strong. Thus, life preserves itself in this cattail country. To witness a mass migration of waterfowl is a unique experience. Here in the wetlands of Canada, cold is in the air, and the snow geese begin to assemble. The Canada geese, much more plentiful, will assemble too, and then in a series of great mass movements, they take off from these, their summer nesting grounds. They react by instinct to the coming of winter, flying hundreds or even thousands of miles to spread themselves out through the warmer areas of our continent. Now these teeming wetlands will grow quiet, and most of the animals that can't take to the wing will disappear until life itself seems to stop. Ground and water will be frozen solid, and for any life to survive would seem impossible. But next spring, as in every spring, the waterfowl will return, and as the ground and water are warmed by the sun, life will be reborn 1,000-fold in this cattail country of the Wild Kingdom.
Mutual of Omaha has presented Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom.
Like what you saw? Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube for more exclusive content. And visit our website at wildkingdom.com.